if you are watching this, I'm going to shuck some oysters. And these are the oysters I'm going to shuck. If you're listening to this, you might just want to skip straight to me talking about Copenhagen and my family vacation. But I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm going to do, which is shuck an oyster in my way. It's not the traditional way, but I don't know how to express that I find opening oysters to be highly dangerous. It gives me a lot of anxiety when I see my friends at home that are not professional chefs or well-versed in opening up oysters, trying to open up oysters, because I've seen a lot of different bad disasters. So I don't know why I'm even showing you this, because actually I'd say don't do this at home. Don't do any of this at home. But we're gonna shuck some oysters, then I'm gonna make a kimchi consommé, and then I'm gonna get into my sort of recollection of some trip to Europe with my family. Welcome to the Dave Chang Show, part of the Ringer Podcast Network, presented by Major Domo Media. Thank you, Yola Tango, as always. Don't forget to check out full episodes and clips of the show on our YouTube channel at The Dave Chang Show. You can also join our community Discord at majordomo.com and contribute your favorite culinary moments in film by adding your submissions to majorfoodporn.com. And I have to be better at writing those down because, man, I can't remember the past couple things I've seen on an airplane that I really was like, I should send this in, and I didn't, so apologies. Anyway, catch up on Recipe Club as well on Spotify or YouTube at Recipe Club Official. And if you're wondering why Recipe Club hasn't sort of come out with a new episode for a month or two, Chris Yang he stars in his own YouTube video on Recipe Club YouTube channel, and it gives you sort of an insight into the workings of Chris Yang, portrait of an artist as Chris Yang. I find it to be good and compelling. I thought it was brave of him to do.
This episode of the Dave Chang Show is presented by Prime. You've got 5 hungry friends in your living room. The drinks will only hold them for so long. I know the feeling. I also know that sometimes, back in the kitchen, it's absolute chaos. Meat overcooked, potatoes under, too much salt in the sauce, too little sauce for the noodles. Luckily, you get free Grubhub Plus with Prime. So with a few taps, dinner saved, and so's your reputation. Free Grubhub Plus. It's on Prime. Additional terms and fees apply.
So this oyster, the oyster itself, I think is the perfect food. It is, I sometimes think about the first person that opened up one of these suckers and was like, what? Because it looks crazy. It's hard to think about oysters after you watch Tampopo and that weird Lolita scene. But I thought oysters were pretty disgusting. My father loved them. Korea is a peninsula, so it's a very seafood-oriented, cuisine. And I remember as a kid digging into some kimchi, and there was oysters in the kimchi, and I thought that was not something I wanted to ever taste again. And then my dad would sometimes go out with his friends, and he would get this thing called moram bosam, which is the real bosam, not the one that we sort of bastardized, which is steamed pork belly with kimchi and a specific kind of mu radish kimchi, and sewujot, the salted shrimp, and you would serve it with some frozen oysters. I never saw it freshly shucked. Anyway, even though I didn't grow up loving those flavors, they were always like in my mind that kimchi, oysters, and pork are like a holy trinity, or really shellfish in general, but kimchi, shellfish, and pork really go extremely well together. So fast forward, and I never really ate an oyster, I think, until I started working for, I can't remember, maybe cooking school. I was 22 years old. Maybe I had one before, but it wasn't something I desired. And it's funny because now I love oysters. I really prefer to eat East Coast oysters. I'll have some West Coast oysters cooked. But when I started at 22 working for Tom Colicchio, the importance of oysters was impressed upon me. Because I learned pretty quickly what integrity was in a kitchen, and I just didn't know all of the effort that went into properly shucking an oyster. I just had no idea. I got an earful for the guys I was working with, Marco and Jonathan, because I was opening up oysters that they felt had no integrity because they were dirty, I didn't scrub them well, because when they come out of the ocean, the beds, they have a lot of soil and sometimes dirt and grit, and you gotta wash them carefully. And I popped the belly, which I thought they looked good, right? It's like when I was a little kid and I thought I cleaned my room. It really wasn't clean, you know, until you saw what really clean was. And that was one of the most important things I ever learned in growing up as a cook. And I've never forgotten that. And it's in some ways, having to open up so many oysters in my life, it's become one of the things I look for the most and I love to eat the most. And the reason I'm talking about oysters is when we were in Copenhagen, I bought some oysters for the Ridzepis because they had been such good hosts for us. The last thing I wanted to do, one of the things I wanted to do was repay them, because the first time I ever met them, the both of them, I had met Renee before once prior. It was 2006-ish, and Wiley Dufresne gave me a heads up that they were coming over to the Sambar. Peter Serpico was working Garde Manger station, which was right in front, and I was in the back looking, and I saw them sitting down, and they opened up oysters. And at that time, we were pairing kimchi consommé with oysters, and they ordered some Benton's country ham with some red-eye gravy and bread. And that's one of the food memories that's seared in their minds. Anyway, I tried to recreate that for them. I thought this might be a good opportunity to actually show you how I like to shuck oysters. Really, I've seen all kinds of ways, and this is how I like to do it. I'm going to tell young producer David, who was interested to this, because he didn't know. In 2001, down at the South Street Seaport, there was a big festival, oyster festival. And it was all you can drink. It was like $20 all you can drink, Guinness, and oysters were like 25 cents or something like that. Needless to say, I always say it's hard to get drunk on Guinness, but that day, I did get drunk on Guinness, and my friends were like, hey, they're taking open, what do they call it when you're off the street and you can enter a competition? That's basically what happened. They were looking for a couple people off the street to enter the I won't say the finals, but it was, if you won this heat, you were going to Galway, Ireland for the world's oyster shucking competition. I didn't know it at the time. Anyway, my claim to fame is I made the semifinals of that heat, and I didn't know that it was okay to pop bellies. It was more of a penalty to pop your belly because it was always ingrained in me, you have to have perfect oysters. And then when I looked at my competition that made it to the finals, they just had all destroyed their oysters because the penalty for having a pop belly was way less than not finishing oysters early, right? So anyway, none of that matters. I'll show you how I like to do it. First of all, there's many kinds of oyster knives. I would say people that are professional oyster knives, like shuckers, like I always think about Joe Beef, Dave McMillan, the first time I went to Joe Beef, I saw the knives that he had, the oyster knives. I was like, this guy knows how to shuck oysters, right? And I believe at the time Joe Beef in Montreal had the world's oyster shucking expert, like the best oyster shucker. And I always say that they're like shivs. They're like little prison knives. Sometimes you really need those if you're opening up bigger oysters or belons, which are probably one of my favorite oysters, but sometimes if they're too big, a little gross, from France. This thing is honestly one of the entry-level oyster knives, and I like it the most. People don't like it because you sort of want a blade on this side to cut through the abductor valve. Most European knives are sharp on one side, but they're very, very easy to hurt yourself with. The problem with this knife, again, as well, is I have seen all kinds of accidents with this. If this penetrates the skin, it's gonna hurt like a motherfucker. So the fact is, when you're opening up oysters, and I'm glad I'm doing this because I think I did mention on the pod, I've seen this more and more. I feel like dinner parties, younger people are doing more things that I think most people would never have done at home, and one of which is opening oysters, and it scares the shit out of me. Completely scares the shit out of me when I see people open oysters. And sometimes I realize I'm getting invited because I can shuck the oysters for them. This is a West Coast oyster. You can tell because it's usually rigid, not rigid, it's curvy. It has, it's flaky as well. And when you open this, sometimes these oysters have melon-like flavors. It can taste and smell metallic as well. And they're usually creamier. These are weird notes to have for oysters, But the last thing you'll ever get is that it's briny. It tastes like the ocean. It almost tastes everything but the ocean to me. And Kumamoto's are usually smaller, and those are probably the only Pacific Coast oysters I'll really like to eat these days. Because anything that is this is a Rappahannock that's very close to the Blue Point. These are East Coast oysters, and these are, I don't know, these are the oysters, the variety that I like the most. You're really trying to find leverage. Pressure it open. It's just like picking a lock. I'm gonna eat one. Super, super, super salty, super briny. That's ocean. That's a punch in the face of ocean. That's what I'm looking for. And because they're filter feeders, oysters are eating everything that's like from their terroir. So it's going to taste very different, just like wine tastes different everywhere. Don't do this at home. I've learned over the years, because of speed, to be faster at it. It looks dangerous as to what I'm doing, because it's in a naked hand. And the main reason why I like this oyster knife, I give up a lot of benefits that the other knives have because of the sharpness of the point and because of the blade that allows me to cut through the abductor muscle. And it's not nearly as like big. The reason I like it, I'll forego all of that stuff simply because of this. As I lift up the oyster and the shell, that knife point prevents it from scraping the belly. And I would rather have that than anything else. So from now, I just took that off, and now I point the knife the other way, and I will cut it off. I'll come back around, and I'll scoop it off. And now, once I see it floating in its liqueur, the juice that's in the oyster itself, and I'm shaking around, I know it's good to go. I would say 1 out of 100 oysters, and I always try to smell every oyster I shuck, because I would say, in my guess, 1 out of 100, even if it's straight out of the ocean, might taste like low tide, no, smell like low tide. If that's the case, it's dead. And that happens even if it's super fresh. So let me show you how you're supposed to technically do it. Put it down, and then you want to find the point where it's like so almost jammed in there, right? And then you're not really jabbing it in. I mean, you are. I'm much better at my way, which is the dangerous way. And I pop that belly. I'm rusty. I would say West Coast oysters are also more grenade-like in their shells. They're so flaky that you can cut the hell out of yourself, so be careful. And this smells, again, I don't know the term, but it's melon. A tip that I learned from Cumulus restaurant, Andrew McConnell's restaurant in Australia, like if you have a watercolor paintbrush, instead of this is the most effective way, this isn't, but imagine it was, just keep it in a bain-marie and you can lift out all the debris. You're going to have to do that because one of the ways that ruins an oyster for somebody is when you're eating it, you're getting the grit. Even if you clean the oyster well. It feels, you know what it is? It's like riding a bike. You know that moment where you feel like you're gonna fall off? And that's not a reassuring thing when you're having a sharp object in your hand. But if you don't go further in, which is why it's so dangerous, and sort of take the leap of faith, you're never gonna open it up. And once you sort of push through that sort of, am I gonna stab myself point? you feel that like that lock, it's like pick and lock, and you feel it. I don't know any other way to describe it. You feel the abductor give just a little bit, and that's when you lift it up. And one reason why I like covering it like this is I can feel that a little bit better. And while it looks dangerous, I'm not really moving it other than it into the knife. I'm not jamming it. It's actually pretty safely lodged in. Sometimes they're stubborn as fuck. And this is when I would have another knife that is sharp as fuck. You know, Rene always brings up a moment when he tasted sambar for the first time with his wife Nadine, and they had oysters with kimchi consommé. And that was a flavor that I had never seen before in, outside of say a Korean restaurant. I just never, but again, knowing how potent those flavors were, they weren't always my favorite, but I'd always think to myself, man, if it was done with a fresh oyster and done with, you know, good pork and good kimchi, then it would taste good. And, you know, I made it and it did taste good. So that's where we went with the bosam, the Momofuku version of the bosam, which is the pork shoulder, not a candied pork shoulder, not with pork belly. But we would take ramyun stock from Noodle Bar and we would fortify it with kimchi, blend it. And at the time, David Arnold, the great David Arnold, who was at the FCI, was teaching us, was always keeping us up to date with modern techniques. There was a clarification process with gelatin. So we'd fold gelatin, melt gelatin in with the already gelatinous sort of pork stock that we'd have from the ramen and blend that in with kimchi. And then we would freeze it and then let that defrost frozen into a filter, and out would come beautiful kimchi consommé. And I'm gonna do my version of it, but I'm not going to strain it in a gelatin clarification. And I'm not gonna, you could also clarify it in a normal way. At home, if you're gonna do it, you don't even need pork soup. And I'll even explain what I did there. You could just use water, and you could punch up the vinegar, the acidity by adding some rice wine vinegar, and just that kimchi juice will be good. Honestly, you could just puree kimchi. This is some chonga kimchi we bought from the market. Also, Corey Lee, the great Corey Lee, has San Juan kimchi that's out in some H-Marts around the country. Check that out. So you could just puree some kimchi and just put it on the oyster. That'll be fine too. So there's a lot of different ways, but I'll show you a way that we've done over the years and a lot of different variations. So I didn't have any pork stock, but we had a frozen spicy pork shoulder butt in gochujang, some sugar, and I just boiled the shit out of this. And this is what I have right here. And after this, we're gonna make family meal out of it. So I'm gonna take some of this broth. Again, you could just use water. And this is the simplest thing possible. I'm gonna take some of this juice from the kimchi. And pechu kimchi, Napa cabbage kimchi is the best one for this. And taste it. That tastes really fucking good. Really good. I'm gonna add some vinegar. I probably added a cup of water to a cup of kimchi, and that's what we have right here. Added maybe a tablespoon of rice wine vinegar. We're gonna puree this, and then we're gonna strain it. So where we would, if you were gonna do this in a gelatin or agar clarification method, you would melt a few sheets in, like you're making Jell-O, basically, and then add it to here, freeze the whole thing, and then as it melts, since the gelatin and the water will melt at different points, you're gonna get a beautiful consommé. It's one of my favorite ways of making clarification, and it's way simpler than making a consommé that's cooked. This is cheesecloth, but usually a coffee filter will work great as well. If we did it properly, in a proper clarification, it's going to look like watermelon juice, you know? Super, super clear, which this is not. Now I'm upset. Now I'm putting it through a coffee filter, which we had earlier, I would have done. And it's just literally dripping out. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long way. But I would say, listen, if you were doing this at home and if you have kimchi, so many homes have kimchi now, man, it's crazy. I don't even understand what's going on. Whether it's probiotics or not, like, it's pretty crazy that so many homes, basically aka non-white people, are eating kimchi. So if you are so inclined to open up oysters, and listen, you know what a good trick is? I'll do this right now. If you want to sort of, I've never microwaved oysters in my life, but I don't have time for the fucking oven. Grilling oysters is amazing. We had Edward Lee, and the first time I met Edward Lee, he cooked for me oysters that were cooked on a charcoal grill. And once they do, they're so much easier to open up and pop open. That's probably the safest way. What he did was he melted down bourbon with soy sauce and butter, and he just dressed it. So if you want to do oysters, they're not cold, but honestly, a slightly cooked oyster, warm through, is beautiful as well. Let's see if this fucker works. Doubt it. But they're fucking hot. That actually fucking worked. That's actually crazy. I mean, I would be so upset if this happened. I would never gonna do this again because it's so wrong. Even I would say something should not be done, but I like cooked oysters a lot. That's fucking delicious, man. I'm not gonna lie. That's it. I don't know why it pairs well together, but it's really good. Spicy. It has, when you make this, and again, even if you just use water, and you want it to be shellfish, pork free, no problem. Or you're just a pescatarian and you use water, no problem. You don't even need to use the gelatin. It's one of my favorite ways because it really mimics a mignonette, and I'd rather have this than a mignonette. Microwave oyster. Don't put that online, please. As like the social media post, holy shit. But guess what? It works. It fucking works. Tell me how fucking perfectly cooked that is. Come on, dude. Come on, dude.
Wait, just in the microwave hole.
Yeah. Try. That's a perfectly cooked oyster.
It just burns them up a little bit.
Outrageous.
Right?
That's ridiculous.
Anyway, that was our MacGyvering for the day. And I wasn't planning on microwave, but we found out a real microwave MacGyver move. I did it for 25 seconds, popped the shells like super. And if you don't have an oyster knife and you just have a butter knife, you can actually shuck them all open if you microwave them for 30 seconds.
This might be the greatest Airbnb hack of all time.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Chef Mike.
I want to talk about Copenhagen, the city of Copenhagen. I feel like the bear elevated Copenhagen in ways that I didn't know was possible because over the past sort of 20 years, I think it eclipsed all the other European cities in terms of gastronomy. And before that, I believe it was Barcelona, which is not, mainly because of LBE, and Roses was 2 hours away from Barcelona, but I would still say that Spain in general was sort of the epicenter of modern gastronomy. And Copenhagen has changed a lot of that. And I remember buying Renee's first Noma book, which is so not even in print, and it's a book that I believe that he doesn't even like at all. I know he doesn't like it all. This is another book that got lost in Hurricane Sandy, but and I bought that without really knowing anything about him from Kitchen Arts and Letters. And then Renee is the one that not Renee, Wiley Dufresne is the one that sort of connected Renee and myself, and it's been a long-term friendship, and I feel pretty confident that he would probably say the same thing, that it's been beneficial for the both of us to have sort of each other over the years. And it was mainly like, I've never had like a friendship like this. So it's been wonderful to have our partners, wives really get along, and they can commiserate with how dumb their husbands are. And he's just a super close friend, and we've been cross-pollinating ideas for many, many years. But I have spent since 2007, so almost 20 years, at least a trip or two, minus the pandemic, in Copenhagen. So sometimes it would be multiple months, multiple times a month. And I've seen the city grow. And it's one of the few cities that I know extremely well that I don't need to use GPS. And I never saw it in an angle, in a perspective that I saw it from this most recent trip, because I had my kids. And I mean, it makes you think, like, why don't we have these kinds of things, right? Yes, it's limited. It's 2 hours away from London. It's a little bit closer to other cities in Europe. Everyone's tall and beautiful. Summers are beautiful. But the biggest issue to me with Copenhagen, not necessarily an issue, was the lack of food diversity. And one of the reasons why I love America is that we got a little bit of everything. And Copenhagen, sort of, I would say, pre-modern Scandinavian cooking was more inclined to be all things French. And I think Renee and a lot of the other chefs there, but particularly Renee, they helped change that. So it's different. It's not just new Nordic cuisine. This city over 20 years, it's got something going on as well. Like this is like, I'm going to say this is the second wave of Copenhagen. And a lot of the people that I mentioned during Mexico City when we were there, people that lived in Copenhagen now moved to Mexico City, and Mexico City is having this renaissance to the point where a lot of people are upset that that's even happening, the locals. But I guess the best way to describe it is I feel that there's a second wave, a more mature wave that's happening in Copenhagen, and it's really exciting to see, because what is opening up is a diversity of restaurants that it did not have before. And it's a great food town, guys. I don't know what else to say. And I'm sure there's people like, enough of Copenhagen, for fuck's sake. But listen, they got a lot of things going on, and I went with my kids. I've never been to Tivoli Gardens. I've always walked past it. It's basically like their little Disneyland in the center of town. They have great museums. The museums there are fantastic. And even if you want to go 2 hours, like it's like a train ride up to Louisiana, you're going to see one of the greatest art museums in the world. It's just got a little bit of everything. How they go to the education system, and how everyone's so healthy and they ride bikes everywhere. I just was like, this seems to be a really sensible place to raise kids. That's all I'm saying. I don't think we'll ever move there, but I was like, wow. Sometimes the grass is greener on the other side, I'm sure. And I think that when you're living in Copenhagen in the cold months, it's hell on earth. But listen, there's some magical things happening. And what I meant by the second wave in Copenhagen, there's a couple restaurants. There's Bar Vitre, and I'm going to butcher her name, but she was a sous chef. She worked at the R&D team at Noma, and it's Ditri Aura. Man, this restaurant's super cool, guys. And she cooks in a way that gives me a lot of joy. She does Indian influenced dishes. To my knowledge, it feels like she's the only cook in a restaurant that should have 3 people. And the best way to describe it is the restaurant has a pulse. And that seems to be rare, very rare these days. But it sort of emanates from her and her intensity and her sort of technique, because she makes really tasty food. This place is jam-packed. It's small. It's a little wine bar. Maybe there's 20 seats inside. Gave me a lot of early noodle bar, Momo noodle bar days and vibes. People are just sort of spilling out on the chairs and stools outside, drinking, waiting for a table. And if you look inside, you would expect for the amount of people waiting to be at least 3 cooks. At least 3 cooks. I think she's the only person making all the food. And it's not easy construction of dishes she's making. It's a lot of work. And I just was like, I loved it because not only does the food good, as a diner or as someone in the profession, you can taste someone giving a shit, right? Giving a shit is probably the thing you want the most in a restaurant. And I just was like blown away. I wish we had more restaurants like this. But at the same time, I wouldn't want anyone to feel that kind of pressure and stress because it's a high wire act when you're opening a restaurant like that. I mean, Renee's so proud of this restaurant and what she's doing, but she's doing her own thing. And going back to that pulse, it's like, I love that things were 86. I love 86ing things. Well, you can't complain that she's out of the cake because she only made like 8 slices. Well, and having a pulse, even if it's imperfect, those are the things I really want. And I just think that's the best. It was a very cool meal. And then Renee took myself and my wife and his wife for my birthday to a restaurant called Acme. But it's a French-Japanese fusion restaurant. And if you saw that, for the most part, you think of Florlege or Quintessence in Tokyo. Those are two of the best chefs in Japan. They've trained under Passard and Pascal Barbeau, blah, blah, blah. Those restaurants are amazing. That's what you would think it's Japanese fusion. There's been a long-standing tradition of Japanese fusion for many, many years. But when modern-day chefs that are sort of, I would assume in their mid to late 20s, are trying to open up a French, it just says it's a French-Japanese restaurant, I was apprehensive. And I was told they have the partners there have a really amazing sushi restaurant. But I mean, it was a multi-course degustation, but we're under 2 hours. But they had a dish that stopped me cold. I think it was one of the best dishes I've ever had. That's just how I feel about it. And it was mackerel and croûte, 2 ways. It's a dish. Sometimes you get a dish. I had to take a photo of it. I remember these moments when you taste a dish and you're just like, what the fuck? And everything was great. I would be scared to do a Japanese-French restaurant. Those are 2 very strong culinary traditions. And yes, while they have merged, I'm always cautious. But the way I like to describe about food when you're fusing together cuisines, right, is that you can't see the seams. When you're stitching it together, metaphorically speaking, you can't see the seams because the craftsmanship, the thought that went into making each dish and the technique and the finesse is so great that you can't see it. It's constructed in a way that's supposed to be there, right? You're tasting flavors and you're looking at components of the dish that should be there, even though you've never seen it before. And I thought they just did a magnificent job of weaving together in a seamless way, in a very bold way, Japanese and French flavors, but done in a way that is very Japanese. It's paradoxical to some degree, but going to this dish that I had, mackerel and croûte. This is a fish that is in abundance in Scandinavian waters. Clearly, Saba, mainstay in Japanese culture. Japanese cuisine does a specific way of cooking their mackerel where it's, served on rice or pickled. And like fish and croûte is a very famous thing in France. So it's merging together something that is famous in both cuisines and then presenting in a way that almost like yin and yang. And listen, if you don't give a shit about anything, it wouldn't matter. You taste it and be like, that's delicious. But, and this is where I feel like I wish I could see art like Jerry Saltz. I think about food, I think the way someone that like an art critic or a music critic might think about their respective, interest. And I'm looking at this thing and like, wow, this is a fucking genius dish because it's in croûte. It's got texture, it's got acidity, it's got everything you'd want in a bite of food, but on a construction level. I mean, listen, if those guys can figure out how to make 5 more of those kinds of dishes, that's going to be a restaurant to be really reckoned with. So yeah, that was very cool. And again, like you end the meal on a petivier, which is like a pot pie, a French pot pie. It was just a very cool restaurant, and great food. You can eat burgers at Popple. The kebabs. I love Kebabistan. I cooked a lot for my kids there, but in general, I've spent so much time in Copenhagen, but I've never spent it in this fashion. And I know there's a lot of people that have probably been like, oh, I don't need to go to Copenhagen. I've been there before, but there's so much going on there right now. So give it another shot. And one more thing, just how fucking weird things are in Copenhagen, in a good way. Scar's Pizza. There is a real renaissance in New York City pizza. We're going to move to New York for a second. It's not Neapolitan. It's New York, right? And I think a lot of this was seeded by Chris Bianco and Chad Robertson, rightfully so, right? Where they've challenged the notion of the kinds of ingredients and the proper techniques to sort of hydrate and make certain breads and crusts and crumbles, etc. And I think, Scars opened up like 6-7 years ago, Lower East Side. And it's fucking delicious. It really is delicious. And there's only one location, and I think he's opened up in Tokyo. I think he's in Las Vegas now. And I want to talk to Scar because there's something happening. There's Ceres, I don't know, just Latin for grain. It's run by 211 Madison Park guys. They have like a $60 pizza and an $80 pizza. People love it. There's La Industry. There's a bunch of restaurants. Even Sean Feeney has Feeney Pizza. Like, pizza it's never going to go out of style. But Scar's selling a New York City kind of pie in the same way that Major Food and Teresi and Carbone reimagined the Italian-American dining experience with Carbone and Teresi Italian Specialties. I think Scar reimagined what the New York pizza parlor could actually be. Sure enough, they're having a pop-up in Copenhagen. And, you see Hiroshi Fujiwara, and if you see him, you're like, that's one of the coolest motherfuckers in the world. Out of nowhere, you just say, we're at Diamond Pizzeria, and they have several locations in Copenhagen. And this is when you're like, what's going on here? And people from all over the world are coming to eat the pizza as well. It was pretty cool. It's nice to get out of your comfort zone. Anyway, we spent some time in London. We spent some time in Bath visiting friends. I just wanted to shout out this one place in Bath. And for those that don't know, the word Bath comes from Bath. They're the Roman soldiers when they inhabited the UK at the time, England. They had the Roman baths, and they have natural hot springs up there, and Jane Austen and all this other shit. But I thought I was gonna hate it. I thought Bath was great. The pubs, just the vibe. It's also a very walkable city. It's the same thing I like about Copenhagen. You can walk it. You don't need to have a car. Certainly helps, but you definitely don't need it. But they had this Green Street butcher shop that had some ridiculously good sandwiches. They have a porchetta, they have rotisserie chicken, and they put it on these freshly baked baps. They call them these buns. They're like a Kaiser roll. Tremendous. Super, super good. I made my first Sunday roast with their meats, and I just bought like a porterhouse that they had, and just to see a actual butcher, I was like, we have some of this in America, right? Some. But my wish is that I feel like I wish we had more, right? This place is getting really great meat, and they're taking the time to sort of manufacture it right. And what they're cooking is also extremely delicious and timely. And listen, if there was a Green Street near me, I'd be there all the motherfucking time. And, I don't know how we're going to get more fishmongers and more butchers in this world, but that's something we need more of, unquestionably. I think maybe instead of opening a restaurant, if I was starting all over, I would and maybe open up a butcher or some kind of fishmonger type of thing. I did mention I cooked my first Sunday roast, and maybe I'm an idiot, but having lived in Australia and the Star Casino, I only got it at, no one ever invited me, no surprise, to their home for Sunday roast. I always thought Sunday roast was at like 6 p.m. But no, it's actually around like 12 o'clock. So I roasted chicken. I made a whole bunch of food. You know what? I got to say, the Brits figured, maybe they missed breakfast, but they definitely nailed a big Sunday meal. So yeah, the potatoes, I made cheesy cauliflower, gravy. I made Yorkshire pudding. I tried to make a cake actually, but the flour was old. Anyway, I think we're going to be doing more Sunday roasts at the Chang household in the near future. Well, we're back. We're going to do some MOIF.
Okay, Dave. This is a tough one. Rank the Batmans.
Rank the Batmans. Michael Keaton, number 1. Christian Bale, number 2. Adam West was number 3. Val Kilmer, number 4. Ben Affleck, number 5. So Michael Keaton is... I love him. He's the best. And I have him in my phone as Batman. I don't know how else to say it. It's fucking awesome. Yeah. He was always cool to me. That Batman is probably still one of my favorite Batmans. As a kid, when that came out, I needed everything associated with that film. It was just mesmerizing. So yeah, he's number 1 easily.
The next MOIF is, you were just traveling, I was just traveling. What's the ultimate airplane snack?
Ultimate airplane snack. I don't know, but I saw my son house a whole can of Pringles, sour cream, and I should have stopped him, but you know what? It looked like a pro move. So Pringles. I'm gonna say Pringles right now.
Did you have any airplane meals while you were traveling?
I had a toasty. A toasty is basically like a grilled cheese sandwich. It was cheese and onions. It was tasty, but unless I'm flying, like Delta has Shake Shack now. Delta meals I think are pretty fucking good, but food on Asian, maybe because it's just more my cup of tea. Food on Korean Air or any of the Asian airlines they're really good. Yeah, even you can, at the very least, you can get a bowl of ramen.
Korean Air was so good when I flew it.
So
Unbelievable bento box that was just outrageous.
So good.
Honestly,
So good.
Costco samples.
I never do samples, but that shouldn't deter you from taking some Momofuku samples out of Costco. But I don't like doing samples. I don't know why. And maybe it's like a phobia, but yeah. Do you?
I do not. I have the same thing. I don't take the samples.
It's something weird. I just don't want a sample at all.
There's something about the little paper cups. I feel like I'm at the doctor's office. I'm about to take pills.
Yeah, no. I've never been a sample person. Ever. Especially those little things that you get shots at, like a bad club. You know, those little plastic shot things. All right. Well, anyway, give us 5 stars. Thank you for the MOIF. Watch Dinner Time Live and check out everything else we're doing.